Hello, weekend warriors. Welcome back to the workshop. Today we're not doing any wood projects. Today we're talking about fire pits, tabletop fire pits to be exact, because it's summertime and in the evening it's nice to sit in front of a fire and have a nice beverage of one sort or another. But I don't have a lot of space for a traditional wood burning fire pit. Plus, I'm not wild about the smell of wood smoke or the ash or the cleanup afterward. So I like using a tabletop fire pit that is fueled by ethanol or isopropyl alcohol or sterno. I like using sterno because it lasts longer than just burning alcohol by itself. And if you happen to knock the thing over, yeah, you might spill some out, but I guarantee if it's a pure alcohol stove, you're going to have yourself a big flaming mess on your hand. So anyway, we're going to talk about three different designs here because it's three things that popped into my head. One, the traditional that I use all the time, and then two concepts that just sort of popped in and I thought I'd like to share. So let me set things up and we'll get back. Be right back. What I have here are my three basic designs at the moment for tabletop fire pits. One of which I've been using for a long time. It's just a galvanized farm tub. This one I think is a 2-gallon. It's got a cup inside to hold fuel. Okay. It's got a cup inside of it there to hold my fuel. And I've just taken some your basic 1/4-inch chicken wire and made a grill for the top of it, though at some point I'm probably going to braise up a nicer looking grill. But at the moment this works and it makes me happy. And then I have two concepts that I kind of put together over the weekend here and played with and tried out a little bit, so I know they work. But anyway, all of them have something, four things in common. They've got the outside container, so you got to choose something that goes with your eye. So in this case, it looks like it's a galvanized bread pan, but I don't think it was a bread pan. I think it may have been something for planting plants in at one time. As I said, the galvanized farm tub. And then the old wooden box that you've seen probably in 5 or 6 videos. Now, you would think wood would be counterintuitive, but you would be amazed that this stuff does not catch fire when I'm burning stuff in it. So, the outside container. Then there is the fuel container. So, this case, I've got some fuel containers patterned after the backpacking camp stove, only I did not go all the way to make these a camp stove. They are cups cut down from soda cans. And I'll show you how to do those. Then in this case, I've got an old cookie tin that I took my torch to get the paint burned off, and then I took it to the wire wheel and got all that excess ash off, because if you try to burn something with all the paint on it, it stinks to high heaven, and you don't like that. Okay, so the outside container, the fuel container, then there is something to lift the container up to get it into a position that's pleasing to the eye, aesthetically pleasing when there's something burning, because you want to be able to watch the fire. These are not cooking fires or fires for warming. These are fires to keep an eye on, to watch, to sit around. In this case, I used some pieces of marble that I had left over from a kitchen renovation. So I stacked those on top of each other until I got the fire cup where I wanted it to be. And in this case, a couple blocks of wood, and then a top piece of wood to hold whatever I'm going to decorate it with. In this case, it's a hunk of 2x that, as you see, I couldn't use it for any projects, but it's fine for this application. And as I said, I've had a number of fires just testing it out, and you'll see there's absolutely no scorching on the 2x4 there. So while the cups get hot with something burning in them, they don't get to the point where the heat will set fire to anything outside of them. All right, so now we've lifted our cups up into a pleasing position. Now we've got to decorate around them, because let's face it, that's pretty ugly. So there's some sort of decoration. Like in this one, I used rocks. In this one, I'm also going to use rocks. By the way, the initial bit of filler that went underneath to lift it into place, besides the 2 blocks, is I filled in around it with crushed aluminum cans. And that actually worked pretty good, but I decided to go ahead and make a base plate for it. And that puts it just where I want it to be. In this one, I decided to use some nuts and bolts. So we'll get around to that in a little bit. And like I said, this one rock. All right, and then the fourth thing these things have in common is the fuel. Now, I talked earlier about not liking wood. Once again, you have the wood smoke that gets into your clothes, gets on your skin, and when you walk back in the house, you smell like just a burning wood pile. You can use pure alcohol, but once again, if you spill that, you've got a flaming mess everywhere. So I like using sterno, but sterno has become so expensive. Now, as I said, you can buy sterno. You can actually buy it so it has crackles and pops just like wood. But that's like, well, I'll go into the cost of that in a little while. But it's very expensive. So I like to make my own sterno. So we're going to look at how to make sterno too. But first, let's get these guys ready so we can actually fire them up and you can see what they look like. All right, so let's talk about fuel cups here real quick, because after all, we've got a couple things to do, and we've got to be able to hold our fuel in something. So I said before, over here on this guy, my fuel cup was just an old Christmas cookie tin, and that I removed the paint off of, and then affixed to the board inside with a little bit of super glue. I've since sunk a screw in the bottom, so everything is held together. This one's ready to go. Now this guy, for the longer and larger fire pits, I did out of a couple pieces of roofing flashing. Basically, I took the roofing flashing with the bend side down, doubled it up, and did some sheet metal origami, bending the end over, making a flap on the side, making a flap on the bottom. So one on each piece that I was putting together. And then I sank some pop rivets into it, side and the bottom, on both ends, and came up with a cup. Now this would not hold liquid alcohol. Sterno works great on. Liquid alcohol, you got to do a couple more things to seal it up. Like using JB Weld and gluing it all together and sealing the ends. Or just using some foil tape. Foil tape seems to work fine for a while. But like I said, since I don't use alcohol fuel in mine, I'm not going to worry about that on this one. That brings us to this guy, the aluminum can fire cup. Now, this guy is a double wall construction, which means I'm using 1.5 inches of the top and 1.5 inches of the bottom and fitting them together. Now, to get to this point, there's a couple ways you can go about it. Either way, the first thing I do is I mark off my 1.5 inches. Now, I've got this 2x sitting here, so I know it's 1.5 inches thick. So I'm going to lay my pen down along the top of it, and I'm going to mark off my 1.5 inches. Bottom and top. And when you do the top, it's a good idea to get rid of the tab so it doesn't act as a spring and push up on you. Oops. Okay. Now I mark it off because the next step doesn't always work that well for me. And the next step involves a razor blade screwed down once again to the top of the 2x4. Now, online you'll see guys doing this freehand. I'm just not that good. So I like to have a fixture in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this thing up against, and I'm going to start working it around. Not adding so much pressure that I collapse the can, but enough that I'm scoring along that line. When this doesn't work for me, I take my craft scissors, I punch a hole in the middle, and I just cut down to it. But that makes for a rougher line. Oh, sorry, I almost messed up. Before I do this step, I got to take care of this top because I'm using the top as my wide opening. So you can use a can opener. My can opener unfortunately doesn't work, and the odd times it does, it crushes the flat all the way, crushes the tip all the way around. So my little washer snuffers will fall straight through. So I'm going to make sure that I leave enough of a rim that I have a snuffer ledge there. So I'm going to scrape or score along the inside of this raised portion. And I'm going to work that around and around. Not adding so much pressure that the knife comes off and slices my thumb off, because I've already had enough digits reattached in my life. I'm going to take my time and just work this around until it's ready to come off. If I had scored it before, the can would be starting to separate on me already. And then I don't have the leverage to do this. So the can has to be intact before you start the scoring, or when you start the scoring. Okay, so top's out. Now I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and I'm going to round those down a little bit, because I don't want any real sharp edges, sticking out where they're going to get me later. Not that I intend to reach my fingers down in there, except for right now. Okay. Now I'm ready to apply the razor. And once again, straight down pressure, round and round and round, not so much that's going to buckle the can. This is going to take a couple minutes. Okay, it feels like it's about ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and give a little support and work my way around. Okay, now we've gotten to this stage to make them actually fit together, because they're the same size. We got to make one a little bit smaller than the other, so we go with this bottom one, and we're going to do some folds. And we're going to fold it in. And I go about every ½ inch. Okay, so I end up with a nice star shape that's kind of contouring in, which will fit my upper pretty nicely. And now it's just a matter of being gentle, 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 not tearing either one. And then we take our tactical block of wood. There we go. Now I've got a nice lip underneath that I can. All right, with that step done, I'm going to find my scissors. Oh, I have my little craft scissors. I'm going to find my little craft scissors. I'm going to cut a piece of tape for the bottom. Just kind of cover over the bottom edge so it's not so sharp. All right, now it's time for a trip over to the wire brush to remove all the paint and make them all look the same. So they'll be just a nice burnished aluminum finish. So now we're ready to fill these things up with our decorative whatever. This one we're going to use rock. This one I'm going to use some hardware, I think. I've been collecting nuts and bolts for a good 40 years, so may as well use them. Side comment here. It's always good to make yourself a grill of wire. Or if you have the ability, braise yourself up a nice grill. But remember what kind of media you're filling with, because it has to be tight enough that you don't dump the media into your fire cup. So in this case, I've once again used the chicken wire and all that for the bigger cups. For these little guys, in order to put the fire out, you got to use a snuffer. Just deprive it of oxygen. Well, I happen to have these washers that fill in perfectly as snuffers. But they will also keep any of the media from going down inside my cups when I'm pouring. So as I said, with this guy I'm going to go with some nuts and bolts and hardware. So now it's just a matter of filling her up. And that is a tabletop fire pit that definitely looks like me. You know, my wife might not be wild about it, and I probably won't keep it, but just for our purposes today, I mean, if I was to polish up a lot of that stuff, it would look really, really good. Okay, so that's it for that one for now. Fire pit number 3, I guess we'd call this one. Wooden box. As I said, I've burned this one a couple of times now with the both with just the aluminum cans as my riser for the fire pot, and with the board underneath. I'm not getting any scorching of the wood. I'm not getting any scorching on the edges of the wood. So as a concept, this one works pretty good. And don't take my word for it. I'll show it to you in a few minutes. If I was to do this again for real, believe me, it wouldn't be our utility box that we made so long ago on the channel. Okay. This guy, the outside gets a little bit warmer because it's made of all metal. So I wouldn't want to be grabbing it right after a fire. However, that said, once again, it burns really pretty and it cools very quickly because, once again, it's made of metal. And then, of course, hiding down here, I have the good old standby. Once again, he is sitting on some strips of marble, the backsplash from counters that are long gone. Then there's sand filling all the way around that, up to the level of the top of the marble. And then there's the river rock on top of that. And of course, once again, I do have the grate over the top to, number one, it looks better, it kind of hides the inside, and number two, it keeps any of the river rock from going down inside the cup. All right, now it's time to go and make fuel for these because we've taken care of 3 out of 4 of the items. So hang on, we'll go make some fuel.